Hello, I'm Leonard Maltin, and we're here at the legendary Formosa Cafe, which is an official landmark now in Hollywood, and is just around the corner from the old Samuel Goldwyn studio, where a great movie called Some Like It Hot was made over 40 years ago. That's hard to believe. And I'm sitting with another legend, a living legend, Tony Curtis, the co-star of that movie. Tony,
Leonard,
great to
you're
see
too
you.
kind.
I'm just telling the truth, Tony.
Well,
That's
at least
all.
I'm alive.
That's right. That's right. But you've lived through a lot of interesting years. I mean,
Yes,
you were
including this booth.
including this booth, I'm sure.
Yeah, there were a
This is
lot
what
of
they
stuff.
call the Maryland booth,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Well, there were a few other people that sat in it.
I'm sure of that.
Yeah, but
Now, did you hang out here? Was this?
oh yes, but we were doing Some Like It Hot. If we finished early enough, Jack and I had come over. We'd get out of our ladies' dresses, and Marilyn would get out of her lady dress and dress up like a guy. And so, it was a perfect combination. We would meet here after shooting and have a drink and a lot of extras, a lot of extra girls. I don't mean extra girls, but
Yes.
a lot of girls that worked extra. Beautiful young women would come in here, and most of the guys from the studio, Grips. Yeah, the place was really jumping with a lot of intriguing people. I always liked it because it was a wonderful place to gather the different varieties of workers.
The social strata of
Yeah,
Hollywood,
yeah,
the
right.
working strata.
The working strata. You know, we were all workers. I mean, there was no if you didn't want to be part of it, you didn't come in here. It was nice.
Do you remember the very first time you heard about Some Like It Hot? How it was pitched to you?
Yes. Harold Mirisch had a house on Lexington Drive up in Beverly Hills, and he used to run movies on the weekends. Harold came out of Milwaukee and made Hershey chocolate bars, and he decided to become a producer. I don't know how he arranged it with United Artists, but the first thing he knows, he's out producing movies. He produced one film that I was in earlier called Beachhead, and it made a lot of money for everybody, and they were pleased with it. Harold says to me, "Come over a half hour earlier. Billy wants to talk to you." Well, I was thrilled. I wanted to talk to these guys. I wanted to be with Willie Wyler and all those outstanding film directors, Not that the directors I was working with weren't any good, but they didn't have a flair. They didn't have a touch for the material. So I go see Billy at Harold's house. He pulls me in a room. He said, "I'm going to make a movie of two guys that have to dress up as women because they see a murder, and they join a girls' band. I'm getting Frank Sinatra and you and Mitzi Gaynor." I said, "Anything you say, sir." About a week later, he called me. He says, "I'm changing it. It's going to be you, Jack Lemmon, who I saw in a movie and I think he's excellent, and Marilyn Monroe, were it possible to get her, because she was very elusive and in a lot of trouble. This was 57, okay? And those were difficult years for Marilyn, starting around 56. Her personal life overwhelmed her career.
Yeah.
There are more shots of her coming in and out of hospitals, courtrooms, crying. That's what made Marilyn so vulnerable, and people loved her for that because she allowed them to see that. And so by 56 and 57, when we started that concept, Billy knew that there would not be trouble with Marilyn, but he had to slow down the whole thing. And you only as strong as the weakest link. And he told Jack and me, he said, "Whenever she gets it right, I'm going to print it. So keep your fingers out of places you don't want them to be." And so this was a lot of, I won't say pressure. I loved it. This was like joining the Foreign Legion and working,
Well, let's so it starts with a meeting. And,
Yes.
And you were the first one signed on then.
Yes, I was the first one that signed on. And we went down to San Diego, to the Coronado Hotel, and started shooting there.
So that's where it began. On the location.
The location.
Okay.
Marilyn was in excellent shape and condition then, All the lines came out easy. Jack and I there had to, on two occasions, dress up as women, but most of the time, no, I came in as a woman, and then I had to come out as the millionaire. And when Jack and I were in the hallways, I was Joe, the musician, with Jack. So it wasn't complicated, but I had to work it out really carefully in my own head, so I knew where I was. It was only on the beach shooting there that we're shooting the beach scene when Billy said, "What shall we do for the millionaire?" I said, well, Billy, the people in the movie would know my voice. The people watching the movie wouldn't. But I'd like to do something different. He said, what would you do? I said, well, maybe I could talk a little bit like this. He said, well, do it, Tony. I said, I shall. So I took Cary Grant and manipulated him a little bit, turned him into a New York gangster, and that's how it started. I mean, we just improvised it right there.
Well, that was an inspired idea.
Wasn't it wonderful?
Yeah.
Wonderful for me. In fact, Billy loved it so much in it. When I'm in the bathtub, Jack looks at it and he says, that accent, nobody talks like that.
That's great.
Yeah.
Now, the Del Coronado was a perfect choice, too, because it's frozen in time.
Frozen in time.
And so for a 20s period picture, you
And
didn't have to do anything.
another reason, he didn't want to travel with Marilyn.
Uh-huh.
He wanted to keep it simple, a Cars Day journey. She was then under the auspices of Paula Strasberg and Lee Strasberg, you know, and she would do a shot, and she wouldn't look at you, she'd look at Paula. And if Paula nodded her head, then, you know, and Billy caught that on very early, right in the middle of a scene once. He said, cut. He says, how was that for you, Paula? That was the end of Paula. There was no more, you know, no more Paula in that sense. And the picture progressed like that, you know. He watched it very, very carefully.
Was it at all strange to be on such a public location and have, you know, sightseers, tourists?
No, not for me.
walking?
I've always enjoyed it. I mean, I never found it a problem for me. But you know, between Jack and Marilyn, you know, Marilyn would come into a shot, shaking her hand, saying, "Relax, relax." Relax. Jack would come in and say, magic time, magic time. Jesus, man, it was, I was stuck between these two people, you know?
No. Startling exception was having to learn to not just look, but behave like a woman.
Yes. Well, you know, all of us are half man, half woman. Some of us more than others, right? And we got a female impersonator who showed us one thing that I never forgot. He said, when you lift your hand like this, you get a muscle, see? But when you twist your hand down, the muscle disappears, so you must walk around with your hands like this.
Very interesting.
And when your step goes to the left, your hip goes to the left. I learned that from Mae West. Mae West used big wedgies, so when she stepped, she'd hump, bump, come up and see me sometime. So I just remembered that. It was really easy. It wasn't big. It was the clothing that we had to be careful with.
Why?
Well, because they took us to Western costumes, and they put me in a Debbie Reynolds dress, and then a Janie Powell. The waist were too high or too low, and Jack was ending up in Norma Shear's dresses. I ended up in a Loretta Young outfit. So I said, Jack, we can't wear this stuff. It'll kill it. I mean, you know, it'll give it away right away. So I went to Billy Wilder. Jack said, I'm not going to ask him. I said, I'll ask him. Then I went to Billy Wilder and I asked him, I said, could Ori Kelly make our clothes? He said, yes. Well, we got so excited.
Well, one of the top fashion
The
designers.
best.
in
And
Hollywood.
imagine two guys getting clothes made by Ori Kelly. That's, in its own way, a really nice thing. And one day at Goldwyn Studio across the street, the soundstage doesn't exist anymore, but dressing rooms do. He came over and went from one to the other, Jack, me, and then Marilyn. And we had dressing rooms then. Jack came out in his shorts, and Ori had a tape that he'd whip out. You know, one of those tapes? Yeah, the guy would sit down on the ground with a paper and pencil, and Ori would measure. So he measured Jack 14, 34, 15, 97, 88, 43. The guy wrote it down. Then he came to me, and I was in the equivalent of Calvin Klein's in those days, right? So he took the tape and he measured me around the waist, 30, 31, the back 34, sleeves 34 and a half. Took every bit of my measurements, waist, everything. Then he went to Marilyn, who was in the next dressing room. Now, Ori told me the story. I remember the first part. I wasn't there for that. Second, and she comes out in a blouse and a pair of panties. And this guy squats down, Ori throws the tape out, starts measuring Marilyn. 26, 14, 37. He gets to a bottom, and he measures, and he looks up at her, and he says, you know, Marilyn, Tony's got a better looking ass than you. She looked at him, opened the blouse, said he doesn't have tits like these.
What would you
you
give have had a camera running, film running at that
on
moment,
any
right?
on any of that stuff. You'd have loved it, you know. And it was so ingenuous and so, Marilyn at the beginning. Well, she was always okay, you know. She was just troubled a lot,
Yeah.
and we all had to put up with it. But I didn't find it any problem, you know. I had that kissing scene with her. She was naughty. She was like a mean 7-year-old girl. She'd fall on me and grind me, not only with her mouth but a few other places. And she'd wait until I got aroused. Then she'd get up off me. I remember Billy would look at
Would that be the definition of mixed emotions? Would you call it that?
yeah, that was not quite mixed, but it was there. But this is what went on,
Yeah.
and you know, it was fun. I can't think of it as anything less than that. You know, making that movie was fun.
Now, one of the things about this movie that makes it work and makes it so good is that, and I'm sure this was very carefully thought out, I mean, you guys have to be convincing as
We do,
women.
we do.
It's not a burlesque.
No, it
So,
doesn't.
so how did you approach that?
Well, you see, the first day that Jack and I dressed up like women, Jack came out of the dressing room first. I kind of knew what his outfit was like. They made it for him. Mine were made a little more subtly, perhaps. And I guess our input to Ori gave him the idea of how we should. When Jack came out, he was like a 20-cent tart. He was chewing gum and his hips swaying left and right, you know, carrying a purse. When I saw him, instinctively I understood that I was not going to do that. So I came out like Grace Kelly or my mother, very, very, always meticulous. And from that first 2 seconds in the doing wardrobe test, I realized and Jack realized we had it made. That is to say, we knew we were going to blend with each other like two good musicians, that there was going to be no problem of any kind.
So your mother was really kind of a role model?
Well, my mother was, you know, my mother was, could be very aloof and out of it. And I liked the Grace Kelly look. And, you know, every time I stopped talking in the film as a woman, I would purse my lips because my lips looked too straight. So as soon as I would stop. Perfect.
Yeah. It was
Perfect.
You got it. I mean, you got
Excuse
it.
me. I mean, I just love it to just go in my own head.
Yeah.
A lot of things happen, you know.
Yeah.
And that was the female in me. Jack was the same thing. He would go, "Ooh," you know. So, and it wasn't any more complicated than that. And it was nerve-wracking because that was a period of time where men in dresses didn't get guesses. You know, you just, we didn't talk about that stuff.
Well, the times were different, and there was certainly a more repressive
Absolutely.
atmosphere at that time.
Look at Marilyn's clothing. It was very advanced. See-through dresses.
Yes.
And Ori Kelly would tie a string just below where her bottom was and draw it to the front of the dress. So that dress would hang right into her buttocks. Now, these were the little things that people didn't know about, but that was it. I mean, that was Ori Kelly, genius in terms of women's clothing.
Now, I read, now you have to tell me if this is true or not, that as brilliant as Ori Kelly was, you outdid him and your co-star in terms of taking care of bodily needs.
Yeah,
during the
I
course
did.
of the
I
day.
did. You know, I saw what was going to happen, and I knew when we got back here and started to shoot here, Marilyn was 2-3 hours late, and Jack and I'd go in the morning at 6:30. We'd do makeup, hair, then go in the wardrobe, and we'd, if you'll excuse the vernacular, empty ourselves. You know, be prepared for a long morning. Then we put on garter hose. We put on a mechanism that didn't make us look like men. All kinds of things. And if we had to go to the bathroom, it was a 20-minute experience. And Jack and I would, and she still wasn't there, but they wouldn't let us go because she's liable to show up any minute. So I devised something that I saw in a movie. I forget now the name of the movie. It was about American pilots in B-24s in the Second War, where the pilots used to have a little funnel that was in their trouser with a little tube going down, so they never had to go to the bathroom. So I rigged one like that. And Jack said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Never mind, let me show you." And I showed him. He says, "I'm not wearing that." I didn't wear it. I tried it one day. It didn't work.
But it was a very, very resourceful idea.
Well, I liked it. I mean, I enjoyed it. I turned it into a really mathematical equation. You know, Jack and I did. Jack and I would make bets when Marilyn would get it right or wrong. I mean, it sounds like I'm doing a number on Marilyn. I'm not.
Well, no. Well, let's talk honestly about this. That places an enormous burden on everybody on a movie set, especially the two of you who are on camera.
Particularly Jack and me, and particularly me. You know, I could never lose the sense of the joy of it. But nobody prepared her for what we were going to be doing. So it was a little more strenuous and more difficult for me. But never to the point where, you know, there was an expression that I was supposed to have said that kissing Marilyn was like kissing Hitler. I never said it.
The other thing that's amazing is she's so good in the movie.
Fabulous.
She's
That's because
wonderful
Billy
in the
Wilder
film.
allowed her to. Her marriage with Arthur Miller was near its end, and they were battling. I could see that in the way they behaved each other after she finished shooting, so that didn't help.
Did she derive no satisfaction from the fact that she was in a funny movie, doing good work?
No, she didn't.
How sad.
Yeah, really sad. I enjoyed the idea that we were friends early, and she did too. But you know, she did. Jack and me, we just were so happy and thrilled we were working. You know.
Let's talk about working in this film and working with a Wilder Diamond script. I've always heard that Billy Wilder was very insistent that there be no deviation from the they crafted that script. You had to stick to it.
Right.
So improvising was not what he was.
Well,
after.
you didn't have to improvise. The dialogue was too good. When I'm in the cabin with Marilyn, with Sugar, and there's this swordfish over the bulkhead, she says, "What is it?" And I said, "That's a member of the herring family." She says, "Isn't it amazing that big fish, they can get them in those little jars?" I said, "They shrink when they're marinated." Now you're gonna, what can you ad-lib that's better than that? They shrink when they're marinated. You know, goodbye, Charlie. Charlie says to Pat O'Brien, "Well, if they catch me, it'll be goodbye, Charlie." He says, "Goodbye, Charlie." I mean, you know, the dialogue was perfect.
The best writing there was.
Oh, God,
Yes.
it was, and I'm so thrilled. I ended up in the movie voted the funniest movie of all time.
You should be proud of that.
That means a lot to me, pal. Means a lot to me. You know, all the comics in town hate me for that. I don't.
And it's just as funny today.
It is.
You know, it hasn't dated really.
No,
not
not
a
at
bit.
all. Jack's, you know, contribution is magnificent. It was perfect. You know, I remember it. I said, Jesus, I got to tone him down a little bit. I would think as the girl. But you couldn't. He was just, you know, my name is Daphne. Daphne. Geraldine. He said, I never liked the name Geraldine. I mean,
Did you two hit it off as colleagues on screen? Did you feel you just had that chemistry?
we knew each other before the picture started. I got in 48, he came around 53. And we'd see each other socially. We were about the same age. In fact, I may be a year older than Jack. And so therefore we were like perfect middleweights. Right around 167, both standing 5'11". We couldn't throw a punch at each other without parrying it, you know? And that made it fun.
I know one of Jack's favorite scenes, maybe his very favorite scene, is the maracas scene.
Yes, right.
Because I've heard him say this, that it was the timing of it that he was trying so hard to get. How do you do this using these props? And then it just seemed to click. Billy Wilder gave him the clue about what to do.
The clue was a simple one. The basis for it is simple. Let the people laugh at his answers. I'm engaged. Who's the girl? I am. And so
I'm laughing in the retelling.
Yeah,
of it.
so the audience would hear it. But why would a guy want to marry a guy? Security. So it gave an audience the time to get to. Wasn't that beautiful?
So smart. It's so smart.
Oh. All the other dialogue, you have to go back to see it again and again and again and again. You know, and a lot of wonderful lines in that whole place. You know, that George Raft when Pat O'Brien comes in, He said, "Who are these? These are my attorneys." Where were you? At Rigoletto.
You can retell. I'm laughing just you're reminding me of the scenes.
Yeah, really.
They're funny.
And they were so amusing. I show up almost every day, whether I worked or not. I just enjoyed hanging out with him, you know, talking with Billy, you know, getting in an insight to movies, the way he set up shots. I learned a lot from Billy Wilder. I use it now.
How
On
so?
any project I work, I know that lens. I know where it is. I know where it's going to move. I try to move that camera. That camera and I become one person. That's that's the stuff I picked up from Billy. And he'd worked with all of the great players, and to think that I was one of them, and he thinks of me that way. I mean, you know, that's the joy and the pleasure and the texture of the work. I think of it that way. You see, to me, it isn't just to learn lines or, well, that's easy to learn a line, you know. Get a feeling to bring something with it, you know, something that an audience discovers just by your face without having to understand what you're saying until later. Billy Wilder set up jokes in that movie that paid off later. I better get out of here because it'll be Goodbye, Charlie. Goodbye, Charlie. George Raft. Too bad, Charlie. You would have had a full house. No, Spats, no.
I always liked Joan Shawley. It's her band. Marilyn plays
When
in her
she
band.
walked down that train, going to the bathroom, you knew just what she was going through. You know, she brought, again, a little extra Tom, which actors should be able to do. And that's where Billy allowed us that privilege. He allowed Joan to become an impresario. You know, that was all her behavior. And they wrote it with that in mind.
Well, I think also he came out of that era of Hollywood when they used to relish all those character actors, those supporting actors who would have those moments.
Always.
And I think he not only allowed them, he enjoyed having them
Absolutely.
do those things.
And giving a player like Joey Brown, forget the word like, giving Joey Brown the most famous joke line of all time. You can't say it's a bit player or a co-star, nothing. Got nothing to do with nothing. You know? Those lines were just precise and clean and distinct. And
Now, there was some talk of dubbing your voice.
yes,
And
when the picture started, I couldn't get the right elevation of my voice. I kept slipping in and out and slipping out. And there was an actor, I don't remember what his name, a very fine voice actor, who came in, did some dubbing. Then they combined the two, and then it ended up what it was. They modulated it, I think. You know, Jack they didn't touch because you see, Jack was outright impudent. You know, I wanted to maintain that rather quiet. You know, I could never quite reach that tone.
Well, it doesn't come naturally. It's not.
Well,
not
I didn't
your
even.
vocal
It didn't make
range.
any difference to me. I only wanted that look.
Yeah.
I knew the look.
Yeah.
I knew how to stand.
Right.
You know, and it's a visual medium. You could do anything with sound. You know. And I knew that. That's why I did Cary Grant. And that's why, as Joe, I did my good old-fashioned New York Bronx Mamza. You know.
It's going to be obvious to ask this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Why do you think it does hold up so well? Not every film, not every good film
No.
of 1959
No.
plays as well
I
today.
agree with you, and I'm not quite sure I think it's all of that chemistry. I think the meaning comes after the work. It was just, and you notice Billy Wilder never tried to duplicate it.
Now tell me about, there's a famous story about a stripper in a cave.
Oh yeah, listen. By that time, the picture, we were near the end of it, and poor Billy was having back troubles and he couldn't sleep. Oh, we're down in San Diego, and I'm saying, Billy, I'm having trouble sleeping at night down here. He says, I shall give you one of my French suppositories, put you to sleep instantly. I says, great. So the next morning he said, did you do it? I said, yes, my ass fell asleep, but I was up all night. That was Billy Wilder and me, okay? So this was a lot of stress for Billy. I could see it, really stressed out. So Edward G. Robinson Jr. is going to come in a cake. Pops out of it with a machine gun, mows down George Raft, right? George Raft says some joke and dies. So I got this stripper, big bosoms, to get in the cake. And I let a few people know. And when she burst out of the cake, we all sang, "He's a jolly good fellow." I organized it, you know, and nobody knew it but me, the prop man, and a couple of other people. And so I was standing next to Billy. We were supposed to be under the table, standing next to him. When she popped out, he almost fainted. I said, "Come, Billy, step." No, he wouldn't step forward. He didn't know what it meant. Then we all started to sing that song for him. That's nice, isn't it?
That's lovely.
Made me feel good.
Maybe gave him a moment of relaxation.
Well, it did. That was
what must have been a pretty tense.
Right, and a perfect time for him too.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
all the guys were around. He's a fine man. You know.
You've got a lot of pictures on your resume that are going to hang around a long time, but this one may be at the very top of the list.
Hal, I couldn't be happier. I feel my contribution, if I may be so bold, I feel my contribution is a major one in the picture. I played straight both for Marilyn and for Jack, and I had my own moments. You know?
Yeah.
That's very tasteful for me. Audrey Wilder said, "Tony, I'm telling you, the job you do is superb. You give that picture, you tie it together." Well, you know, I never thought of it that way, and I don't think of it this way now. But that was what my job at that time was, you know. And I like talking about the picture with you because it's nice to examine all those subtleties that went on and tell you all of these amusing little incidences because they're part of the movie. I'm sorry all actors didn't do a little dissertation after the movie was over, give you a little insight to what went on, what didn't go on, you know. I took Meryl, I said, "Meryl, I want to try this out." She said, "What?" I said, "Come on." We went out to Gold Room, right over there. And we went into the ladies' room. And I said, "I want to see if this works." So I went to the mirror and putting my lipstick on, and she's standing on the side laughing. You know, when the girls are coming in and out of the stall, nobody stops it. I pull her out, I said, "Well, it worked." She says, well, before she could say anything, a girl walked by and said, "Hi, Tony."
Didn't you and Jack try it once?
Yeah, well, I did it with Jack. I did it with anybody dressed up.
Now, what happened when you and Jack tried that out? That was early on,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, no, very early on. I tried it. I instigated it with Jack.
Yeah.
So I took Jack in, and I went in front of a mirror and started fixing my hair. I didn't want to open one of those stalls because I didn't want to be caught opening a stall. I mean, you know, and neither did Jack. So we both sidled up to each other's shoulder and in the mirror fixing our makeup. And I watched Jack through my mirror on him. And he was loving it. He was enjoying it. I mean, you know, I just went into the lips and just kind of pulled. Not Jackie. Jackie, darling, kind of adjusted his wig. I says, "All right, dear, come on, let's go." It's a little, we've been in here long enough.
But you got away with it.
Oh, I love Jack. I mean, we had such.
But I mean, did that? The way I heard the story, and maybe I heard it wrong.
Please.
Was that it helped give him confidence? That it helped convince him he could get away with this masquerade?
Well, yeah, particularly with the way he was playing it. You see, he wasn't playing it. I won't say subtly, but he wasn't playing it quietly. And he wanted to get a little more gregarious. And we both liked the idea that one of us was screaming and the other one was restrained. And so anything we could do to do that, you know, we'd go to parties after work or whatever, somebody's house party, and I'd always go up to his table and ask him to dance. We'd get up and dance with Cary Grant watching it. It was too good. And nobody knew about the picture then. No one knew what was going on. What are these two guys dancing?
What must they have thought? Yes.
And it helped Jack. I could see it helped Jack. You know, his scenes with me were always magnificent. He felt free. He felt open. That made me feel wonderful because, and I felt the same way. You know, we were gifts to each other.
Now, there have been a lot of great comedies. We could sit here and rattle off lots of names of great movie comedies. But when the American Film Institute had its poll, Some Like It Hot was number one.
Number one. Isn't that thrilling?
That's pretty impressive.
That is very impressive. And I think that we were connected with it, you know, and that I'm able to remember these stories about it.
Well, what's great about DVD now is that on the same disc as the movie I get to sit here and talk to you, and
Oh,
you
very
get to
nice.
recount these stories and hear these wonderful memories.
And you know, it gives the DVD a great deal of stature because it's discussing the movie, there are stills, etc., and then you segue into the film, so you get to know a lot more about them. I would imagine they'll start doing that with a lot more pictures.
Oh, I think so. Yes, I think that people really enjoy it. If you care about a movie, if you not just like it, but you love a movie, you
Right.
care about a movie, or you're curious about a movie, it's the greatest opportunity in the world.
And for us it is, you know, a movie that we can never forget and love so much is part of our youth, is part of our lives. And, you know,
I'm lucky to get to sit here with you, Tony.
my
Thanks so
pal,
much.
it was wonderful talking with you. I
Same here.
appreciate it. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Adios, amigo.